Hello and welcome back to my channel, or just a plain welcome if you're new. My name is Victoria and today I'm going to be talking about ZENITH by Sasha Alsberg and Lindsay Cummings. The basic premise of this book is if you took Selena Sordothian from the Throne of Glass series and made her into a space pirate. Did you ever wonder what that would look like? Well, this is your answer! This book though. I don't know if you guys have been following the hype around this book, but I have never seen a book with such mixed reviews online. I have seen people raving about this, saying it's the best book they've ever read, the plot is fantastic, and I've also seen people saying it's completely terrible. The only reason Sasha Alsberg got this deal is because she's a booktuber, just completely ripping it apart. Well, that being said, I'm here today to tell you that it was just okay. If you haven't heard of it, ZENITH follows Andy, or the Bloody Baroness as she's more commonly known, the captain of a gang of criminal lady space pirates. Growing up with a military background on her home planet of Arcardius, Andy is outlawed for the death of her best friend and the planet's heir, Kaylee Cortas. After years on the run developing her infamy as a bloodthirsty criminal, the book begins with her capture by Dex, the man who once broke her heart, and his employer, Kaylee's father, who is the current general of Arcardius. With no other options except death, Andy is forced to accept a contract to save Kaylee's brother, who is currently imprisoned on the enemy planet of ZENITH. Facing a dangerous future and the ghosts of her past, Andy and her crew plot the heist, all the while a new evil arises in the galaxy. There were a lot of good things I liked about this book. The plot, for one, was absolutely fantastic. My favorite show in the whole world is Firefly, but I also love Dark Matter, and so this is kind of the same principle of this rogue gang of space pirates, except for this time they're all women, so that's fun. It's a real page-turner. I could not put it down. The plot was exciting, it kept driving me forward, and the characters themselves were also really hilarious at times, and all around fairly interesting. However, where this book falls apart for me is in the writing. It was good at times, but clunky at others, and the same descriptions were used over and over and over to the point where they completely lost meaning. The other thing I had a major issue with was the emotional pacing. There were a lot of scenes that were meant to be traumatizing or heart-wrenching, which I just felt had no context or backstory enough for me to really care, so I was just left kind of going, okay. That being said, I did enjoy this book. I gave it 3 out of 5 on Goodreads, and I still think it would be a good read for any of you that like sci-fi and like space pirates. That concludes the non-spoilery section, so if you haven't read this book yet and don't want to be spoiled, now would be a good time to leave and come back. So talking about the plot, this was a real page-turner, as I said. It opens with Andy accepting the contract to try and free Vaylin, Kaylee's brother, from where he's imprisoned, so we get this fun action heist sequence. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, you also get various other perspectives, one being Nor, who is the current queen of ZENITH, the enemy planet where Vaylin is imprisoned, and there's hints throughout that she's done something with Vaylin, and we're not really sure what exactly it is. And then there's another perspective, which takes place in the past, of this woman named Claren, who has some sort of magical ability and is somehow doing something sketchy. Somehow these subplots are linked to Vaylin, but at the beginning you're not entirely sure how. The switch in perspective was really well done. It often added a comedic element, particularly when it would switch back and forth between Andy and Dex in the beginning, and there are different kind of views towards each other and their history. And the flashbacks to Claren and the insights into Nor's brain were really interesting and added tension to the story because there was clearly some evil thing happening that I wasn't entirely sure of what it was, so it kept me wanting to read to find out. About halfway through, you find out that Claren is taken captive by General Cortas, who is Kaylee and Vaylin's father. At this point, I'm going, okay, this woman is this crazy seductress who is talking about how she needs to make him hers and blah 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 with her little compulsion powers over here, and I'm going, oh shit, Vaylin is her son, which coincidentally would also make Vaylin Nor's brother. However, this was not confirmed, but this was my running theory. You also find out that at some point Nor visited Vaylin in prison, and there's some weird thing going on, but we don't know exactly what it was yet. So I don't know what you guys thought while reading this, but I did not guess the full plot twist we find out at the end, but I was definitely onto the fact that they were related. So the crew manages to free Vaylin and bring him back home again. There's some other stuff that happens. The ZENITHs attack some other planet along the way and shit goes down. There's this ball and Vaylin and Andy go together and it all seems very cute, and meanwhile I'm still shipping Vaylin and Andy because I don't know the extent of his cray-cray. It's all very dramatic. They get him home and Andy is reunited with her family and it all seems kind of nice, except for her father's such a dick and is basically like, oh, by the way, like, I know that you weren't actually guilty for killing this girl, but like, we can't associate with you anymore because we'll ruin our reputation. You're the murderer of the ex-heiress, so sorry, I'm outie. She hasn't been home since she escaped her death sentence and has basically been on the run, and she comes home and the first thing her dad says to her is, I regret the fact that I helped you get away. What an asshole. One bit that really made me laugh at this point is Andy starts reflecting on like the creation of the galaxy and sort of how things came about, and she's talking about how there's like the source of good and the source of evil and it's two opposing forces that need to be in harmony, which obviously is based on Eastern philosophy, but in this context I'm just sitting there going, I see you becoming Star Wars. And And then there's this summit meeting. I'm just summarizing really quickly. I realize this is a really bad plot summary, but I'm just highlighting the parts that stood out to me. So then they have this summit meeting. Valen gets up to greet his father, and it's all gonna be nice, except then he stabs him in the chest! Shit! Till this point, I was a huge fangirl of Valen. He was so gentle and sweet and all like with the paintbrushes and everything, and I was like, I love you. Please get better and be with Andy forever. And then he fucking stabs his father and takes over the world. At that point, you find out that yes, he is in fact Nor's brother. Points to me! But also that he shares their weird compulsion ability to manipulate everyone. And while he was in prison, Nor unlocked this ability and basically convinced him that his home planet is full of shitfaces and he should help her rule the galaxy with ZENITH, which turns out to be a weapon which when shot from a gun like a bullet, instead of killing the person, turns them into a mind-controlled zombie. So there are obviously hints of this throughout, but it all comes together in this moment, and oh my Gideon! I was flipping my shit! Because I was totally in love with Valen before this, I was sitting there going, no, he must be hijacked like PETA! It's not real! Because there are hints that she played around in his brain, right? So I'm sitting there being like, oh, she probably like did something weird, maybe he's under the influence of ZENITH and all this, but then you get his friggin' perspective, and he's like the supervillain of the series being all like, the world is mine! Okay! And then there's also talk about how his DNA is different, so that turns out to be the sibling reference, but I was like, no, it's because he's got like some weird injection in him that messed with his genetic makeup and he's fine, he has to be fine. I was very emotionally traumatized. So then the book ends with him and Nor basically taking over the galaxy. Andy is unconscious because she's apparently immune to ZENITH, and Dex managed to get her and the general away, and then just before the general dies, he says, there are no Arcadians left, so I declare that Andy, as much as I hate her for killing my daughter, bloodthirsty criminal that she is now the heir to Arcardius. And then it just friggin' ends! That's it! She doesn't wake up, there's no reunion with Dex, there's still emotional things they haven't sorted out, and Valen was supposed to be her friend, but now he doesn't care about her and he's ruling the galaxy, and the general is dead, and everybody's a mind-controlled robot. As you can see, I found this very difficult. So yeah, that was the plot. I found the first 100 pages quite slow, and somewhat due to the writing, I could not get into the characters. They just seemed very one-dimensional. But after about 100 pages, things really picked up. The characters kind of showed more of their personalities. I started to get a handle on who was who, and there was good banter, and the plot really picked up. So if you get through the first 100 pages, this plot, man. This plot, though. So the characters are pretty good. As I said, Andy is basically Selena. To the entire world, she's this murderous, bloodthirsty criminal lady that has no problem murdering thousands of people. And yet then when you get to her inner monologue, it's all about, oh, my past is so traumatizing and I wish I were a better person, but I'm stuck in the darkness I've had to join to survive. A little bit more introverted, so like less inclined to be like, look at me. Then you have her second in command, Lyra, who is this really cool, some sort of alien. Lyra has like scales on her that will heat up when she gets emotional and that kind of stuff. So she's cool. And she's the pilot, and she's got her own side plot as well, where it turns out she was the heir to her planet and then was like, fuck this, I want to go spacefly. Lyra's journey is kind of about deciding what family is and what motivates her and whether or not to embrace emotions or repress them, because her planet is all about repression, because that's healthy. Then you have Breck, who is a giantess and their main gunner, and she did not really have a personality except for the fact that she liked Gilly, who is the fourth member of the crew, who is a 13-year-old girl and the love of my life. She's so funny, oh my word. This 13-year-old kid is just like probably psychotic, but like cracking jokes about everything. Like my favorite bit is like all these bombs are going off and she just like looks up and she's like, I love explosions. Like, this kid though. She honestly was a highlight for me. I felt all the characters were okay, but no one was really that fantastic except for Gilly. Gilly makes my life. Then, like I said, you have Dex, who is her ex-lover. He's like the typical criminal bad boy who's not a horrible person, but is willing to make some sketchy choices. You know, like probably an alcoholic, but you know, Andy also kills a lot of people, so maybe they're well suited. And then, like I said, there's Valen, who turns out was not who I thought he was, and the whole freaking time I was shipping Andy and Valen and being like, Dex can just get out of the picture. Like, I feel like Dex and the Bloody Baroness could be okay, because they're both kind of like morally ambiguous, but Valen is so pure, and Andy's soul is, despite her trauma, is so pure, and they just need to be together, find their way out of the darkness of their past, and live happily ever after, despite having lost their sister and friend. But apparently he's a psychotic maniac, so that's not gonna happen. Although, I'm not gonna lie, based on who I thought he was in the beginning, I'm still rooting for the fact that he is that person and something else has gone on. Like, maybe all of the trauma of the torture is what actually twisted his brain, and that's not really him, nor like brought out the darkness for her own purposes. So I'm still kind of rooting for that, because he was my favorite until he went cray-cray. Till he unleashed the devil within! So those were the main things that I liked about this. As I said, there were some definite issues. First of all, they get quite creative with the swear words, okay? Space-related swear words. God stars, black holes ablaze, starshine, snap. These are all inventive space-related curse words. So why do they feel the need to say hell on every freaking page? This doesn't make sense to me on a variety of levels. First of all, it's so repetitive. Everything is hellish, hell, hellbound, demonic, demon, dark soul, blah 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 blah, the burning fires, the pit, okay? I get it, but the problem is when you use that description over and over and over for everything, it completely loses its meaning. Like, hell is not scary anymore because everything is hellish. Everything is hell. And there's nothing to go along with it. It's just this hellish thing. It was like the mouth of hell. But what does that look like? Tell me more! The second problem I have with this is that hell is a Christian concept. Obviously, other religions have underworlds and all that kind of stuff, but the way they're using it is very much medieval Catholicism, the burning flames, the demons, the hell, etc. And yet, the religion in this, and there is a religion that is made up, is a dualistic kind of Eastern philosophical religion about the opposing forces of good and evil. They made up all of those other curse words that are space-related, and this religion that is space-related, albeit somewhat Eastern philosophical dualistic. So why are you using hell? Like, make up something! There's two opposing forces of good and evil that need to be equally harmoniously in balance. The idea of hell doesn't make sense in that context, because darkness is essential. The galaxy needs both to not fall apart. And so, talking about how it's just the pit of hell all the time, we're all living in misery and condemned forever for our evil, it just doesn't really add up for me. And I could have forgiven it if it was a few uses, but it's like I said, on almost every freaking page, some sort of hell imagery appears. The other little nitpicky thing that bothered me is that this crew is constantly referred to as girls. Not that there's anything wrong with being girls, except for like, why are they not calling them women? Other than Gilly, who actually is a girl, who's 13. I think they're all adults because they talk about how Gilly is a child. So in order to say that she's a child, you need to be substantially older. So why are you calling them girls? It's like there's something wrong with women. Girls is fine, but like somehow calling someone a woman is to suggest like, I don't know, is it because we're afraid of women aging or something? Like you have to be eternally youthful and vivacious forever? What's wrong with being a woman? They're women! Every so often they say ladies, but like primarily it's girls. If you had a crew of male space pirates, would they be going, boys? I mean, maybe they would conversationally to be insulting, like, yo boys, let's go. But no, you wouldn't have the captain talking to someone else being like, I'll send one of my boys. No, you'd say, I'll send one of my men will be there. My men, they're men. So why are we calling them girls? The other thing I found odd about this was the emotional pacing. There was a lot of stuff that happens and a lot of talk about stuff in their past that just kind of had no context for it to really be impactful. There's all this talk about her crew being so dark and they all have darkness in their souls and they've done all these bad things, except for in the context of the story, they actually never do anything bad. They only kill people that attack them first. The reason that they're all criminals is purely because they didn't want to be constrained to whatever life was set out for them. I mean, we don't really know that much about Gilly and Breck, but enough to know that the spaceship is a refuge for whatever dark past they had, and now they're just sailing along having a great time. So not exactly a terrible thing. The other thing that you find out halfway through is that Andy was 14 when she was supposed to be killed and escape. That means that her whole relationship with Dex, who I'm pretty sure is like at least mid-20s, at least he reads like he's 30. She was like 15 when they were sleeping together and she was going around murdering half the galaxy. At least in Throne of Glass, Selena is a Darlin's assassin at like 15, 16, but she's Fae, so she's supernaturally strong and fast, which actually makes that believable. But in this context, Andy is perfectly normal. She just has like extensive education in the fighting arts and somehow manages to be like the most notorious criminal in the galaxy and also has a relationship with an adult man at 15. It's kind of weird. Also, the reunion between Vaylin and Andy is built up as this huge thing because Vaylin supposedly blames her for the death of his sister and he's gonna hate her, and Andy's confident he's gonna try and kill her, and then he shows up and they just have this conversation and they're like, yo, it was tough, we were kids, let's be friends, and then it's fine. You find out at the end Vaylin was faking this whole thing so that he could win her over for his sake, but like even leaving his perspective out of it, Andy spends the first half of the book freaking out that he hates her and is gonna murder her, and then suddenly they have this conversation and she's like, he's my best friend in the whole world, I love him. Dex as well doesn't really have any interaction with the crew aside from like one hilarious scene where Gilly paints his fingernails, and then suddenly he's all, they're my crew, they're my family, I belong with them. There's no emotional build-up for these strong declarations to make any sense. And the same thing with the crew. At the beginning, they all seem like they're best friends and they treat each other like family, but then towards the end, they're all realizing that, oh, we're family, I need you, you're the only people in my life that have meaning. And that's supposed to be some revelation, but there's no change from beginning to end. One thing I did find hilarious was there's this guy at one of the parties who's this really terrible, odious person from Andy and Valen's childhood, and his name is Elodius. So every time I kept reading that, I just kept thinking, Elodius the Odious. Also with the emotional aspect, Andy is clearly traumatized by her past, and her entire planet hates her, and she's this horrible thing, and Valen hates her, and everyone hates her, blah blah blah, for all the things she's done. Except for the way that her friend actually dies, you find out, is in a spaceship accident. So Andy was, yes, supposed to be responsible for protecting her, and instead drove the spaceship that killed her friend, but they're all treating it like she actively sat her down and slit her throat, and it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be the society and that's how they operate, but it would have made way more sense to me if the entire planet thought that she actually was a murderer, if her parents thought it and the general thought it. That would explain the hatred, I think, a lot better, and also Andy's fear if they thought she actually did murder her deliberately, because it was an accident. She was a 14-year-old kid. Another aspect I had an issue with is that after the reunion between Valen and Andy, you can clearly see that she was desperate for Valen to forgive her for killing his sister. That was a huge deal for her. It would allow her to heal from the past and move on and all this stuff, except for in the first half of the book, whenever she thinks about Valen, she just thinks about how she doesn't know him at all, and he was just kind of around, but really Kaylee was the only person that she really hung out with, and Valen was the silent older brother that was just hiding the whole time. So I feel it would have just made more sense if they had had a friendship before, because then Valen would have a reason to feel betrayed by Andy, and Andy would have a reason to desperately want his forgiveness. Also, Andy starts defending the general when Valen tries to kill him, which doesn't make sense because she hates him and she's bloodthirsty. So I just feel it would be more consistent with her character to be this bitch is the one that tried to imprison me and kill me and blackmailed me into saving his son, and then blackmailed me again to stay here and look after his son at that stupid summit thing. It would have made way more sense for her to at least hesitate defending him and be free opportunity for him to die and me to not have to do anything, because she's supposed to hate him and fear him the whole time. Yeah, there's a lot more I could say about this, but I don't want to ruin the whole book because it was good. I did enjoy it. Like I said, I was definitely flipping the pages over and over and over. And these are little emotional things. Didn't make it bad, it just made it not excellent. Now it's time for Inquillery's Inquiries, the part of the show where Inquillery inquires. Why is Breck apparently so worried about the money they have to replace their food stores when she's also willing to spend a fortune on hair dye? Why is Lyra upset that they left a body on their last mission when Andy's known widely as the Bloody Baroness, which implies that they obviously kill a lot of people on their missions for her to have achieved that name? Why does a woman who is clearly the equivalent of a space athlete, wielding swords and waging war for a living, have perfect feminine curves and no muscles? Why is someone who apparently hates killing and is haunted by the lives she's taken always the first one to suggest or commit mass murder? Why does the warden assume Andy and Dex were the ones to start the bar fight just because they're the last ones standing in it? Why do they call themselves space pirates? We don't call our pirates sea pirates. How does someone trained as a military pilot not know enough about starships to pick the best getaway ride? Why is a man so convinced Andy is responsible for the death of his daughter also so intent on keeping her as the bodyguard for his living son? Overall, I really did enjoy this book. While it was not the most excellent book I've ever read, it was a good book. It was a page turner, and I love a good sci-fi story. If you like space criminals / space pirates / badass ladies, I would recommend this to you. It definitely keeps you wanting to read, and it had some nice female friendships instead of pitting women against each other, so that was refreshing. That being said, it will never be a favorite, but I probably will reread it, and I definitely want to read the second one because of Valen. Why? So yeah, Zenith. Not good, not bad, just okay. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!